One of these 10 maintenance tasks is probably already overdue on your Jeep right now. You won't know which one until something breaks. And when it does, it won't be a $50 fix. It'll be a $1,500 repair that a $30 fluid change would have prevented. Here's every maintenance item nobody warns you about, counted down from least to most expensive to ignore. Number 10. Cabin air filter. The cabin air filter is the most ignored item on this entire list, and it should not be. Your Jeep pulls air through a filter before it hits your face through the vents. That filter traps pollen, road dust, and debris, and Jeep's factory service schedule recommends swapping it out every 20,000 miles on JL Wranglers and Gladiators. But if you drive with the doors off, run a soft top, or take your Jeep anywhere the pavement ends, that filter fills up long before 20,000 miles. Owner Forum reports back this up consistently, with real-world Wrangler filters looking completely blackened at 15,000 miles in dusty areas, and Arizona off-roaders reporting they swap theirs every 5,000 miles just to keep airflow normal. A clogged cabin filter wrecks your air conditioning efficiency, turns your vents into a dirt blower, and forces your blower motor to work harder than it was designed to. A replacement filter runs $15 to $30 at most parts counters, and an activated carbon version runs closer to $40 if you want odor filtration too. The whole job takes 5 minutes with zero tools. Pop open the glove box, squeeze the sides to release it, pull out the tray, and swap the filter. But keep running a clogged one long enough, and you're pushing that small $20 fix toward a $300 blower motor replacement. Pull the glove box, swap the filter, and move on. Number 9. Engine air filter. Right behind the cabin filter on the overlooked list is the engine air filter, except this one affects how your Jeep actually runs. Jeep's factory schedule calls for replacement every 30,000 miles on the 3.6-liter Pentastar and the 2.0-liter Turbo, but the real rule buried in the severe duty notes is to check it every other oil change if you see any dusty conditions at all. When your engine air filter is clogged, your engine cannot breathe. Airflow gets restricted, throttle response drops, fuel economy takes a hit, and your engine works harder than it should just to maintain normal output. On a Grand Cherokee with a 3.6-liter Pentastar, or any Wrangler that sees trail use, that's a real performance problem. Blackstone Labs oil analysis data pulled from enthusiast forums shows a clean correlation. Jeep owners who run OEM air filters on the factory interval consistently post lower wear metal numbers in their used oil samples than owners who let the filter go long. On the 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, intake restriction hits even harder because the turbocharger relies on clean, high-volume airflow to make positive manifold pressure. The fix takes 10 minutes with a screwdriver and an 8mm socket, and the filter costs $20 to $40. Off-roaders, gravel drivers, and anyone near construction zones should be checking this filter far more often than the chart suggests, because that chart was written for someone driving on clean, paved roads. Number 8. Brake fluid. Brake fluid is one of those maintenance items that nobody brings up until something goes wrong, and by then, it has already gone very wrong. Jeep recommends replacing brake fluid every 3 years, or every 45,000 miles on most models. The reason this matters comes down to chemistry. Your brake fluid is DOT3 or DOT4, both of which are hygroscopic, meaning they absorb moisture right out of the air. DOT3 has a dry boiling point around 401 degrees Fahrenheit, but once the fluid has absorbed just 3% water, that wet boiling point drops all the way down to 284 degrees. Brake fluid with a low boiling point can vaporize under heavy braking, and when fluid vaporizes, you get a soft, unresponsive pedal at the exact moment you need the brakes to stop the vehicle. If your Jeep ever goes through a water crossing or operates in a humid climate, this process happens faster than normal. A brake fluid flush costs $80 to $150 at a shop. Ignoring it long enough leads to spongy brakes, potential master cylinder damage, and a repair bill that can run several $100s more than the flush would have cost in the first place. Number 7. Tire rotation. This one sounds obvious, but Jeep owners push it back constantly, and the consequences are worse on a Jeep than on most vehicles. Your front tires wear faster because of the pressure placed on their outer edges during turns. The weight distribution and suspension geometry on Wranglers, Gladiators, and Grand Cherokees make that wear problem more aggressive. Jeep recommends rotating every 6,000 to 9,000 miles, which lines up with every other oil change if you time it right. But skip a few cycles and you end up with severely uneven wear that forces a full tire replacement way earlier than planned. A set of quality 33-inch or 35-inch off-road tires for a Wrangler runs $800 to over $1,500, and that's before mounting and balancing. A rotation at most shops costs $20 to $50. Beyond the money, uneven tires hurt your braking distance, your handling on any surface, and your safety. The math is not complicated. Rotate the tires. Number 6. Spark plugs. Spark plugs sit on the maintenance schedule, get pushed back once, then again, and then they just disappear from the conversation entirely. The 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 runs a 100,000-mile plug interval per the owner's manual, but real-world owners who pulled their plugs around 85,000 miles routinely report them already looking worn enough to justify replacement. The 2.0-liter turbocharged four-cylinder is a different story. Original 2018 owner's manuals listed a 30,000-mile interval, though FCA later revised some model years to 60,000 miles or 6 years under normal conditions. This engine has an aluminum cylinder head, and the spark plugs are NGKIL ZKR7G Iridium plugs, Mopar part number 682-92346AA, with a gap of 0.024 to 0.025 inches and a torque spec of 168 inch-pounds. Those numbers matter. Over-torque the plug during installation and you can strip the threads in the aluminum head, and strip threads in an aluminum cylinder head is not a cheap fix. Worn spark plugs cause rough idling, hard cold starts, reduced fuel economy, misfires, and a check engine light that eventually stresses the catalytic converter. The plugs themselves run $16 to $22 a piece at a Jeep dealer, so a full set of 4 for the 2.0-liter runs you around $65 to $90. Stay on the interval and none of that happens. Miss it long enough and you're chasing multiple problems at once. Quick pause before we get to the next one. If you want everything we cover in this channel in one place, every interval, every fluid spec, every warning sign, I put it all into a Jeep longevity ebook. It's the complete guide to keeping your Jeep running as long as possible. Link is in the description. Grab it and let's keep going. Number 5. Transmission fluid. Transmission fluid operates in a strange maintenance blind spot where nobody really pushes you to change it, and the service interval feels far enough away that it's easy to dismiss. The general guideline across Jeep models is to inspect and replace transmission fluid every 30,000 to 60,000 miles, depending on your model. Modern Wranglers and Gladiators with the ZF 8-speed automatic are marketed as lifetime fill and ship without a dipstick, but transmission specialists and longtime Jeep mechanics consistently recommend a drain and fill service at 60,000 to 80,000 miles anyway. Lifetime in factory language means lifetime of warranty, not lifetime of the vehicle. Here's where most Jeep owners get caught off guard. Towing, off-roading, frequent short trips under 10 miles, extreme heat, and extreme cold all qualify your Jeep for the severe duty schedule. Severe duty means shorter intervals than whatever the standard chart shows. And if you bought a used Jeep with no service records, you have absolutely no idea when that fluid was last touched. Old transmission fluid stops lubricating properly, generates more heat, and accelerates wear on every internal component. A Jeep transmission replacement runs $1,800 to over $3,500, depending on the model. A fluid change runs $100 to $200. The gap between those two numbers is the entire reason to stay on top of this. But the next 3 on this list are where the real money gets lost, and one of them almost never gets discussed at oil changes. Number 4. Coolant flush. The cooling system is something Jeep owners check, but rarely maintain, and those are two different things. Checking means you look at the overflow reservoir and confirm the level is fine. Maintaining means you actually flush and replace the coolant on schedule. Older Wranglers with HOAT coolant call for a replacement every 24,000 to 36,000 miles, while newer Jeeps running Mopar OAT coolant stretch that interval out to 10 years or 150,000 miles, whichever hits first. Coolant does 2 jobs. It keeps the engine from overheating, and it prevents corrosion from building up inside the cooling system. Over time, the corrosion inhibitors in the coolant break down. Once those inhibitors are gone, the old coolant starts attacking metal components from the inside, including the radiator, the heater core, and the water pump. A water pump replacement on a Wrangler runs $200 to $500 in parts and labor. A radiator replacement runs $400 to $900. A coolant flush costs $100 to $150. The failure path is completely avoidable, but only if you treat the interval as a real deadline instead of a rough suggestion. Number 3. Differential fluid. This is where a lot of Jeep owners go completely blank, because differential fluid is never mentioned at a standard oil change. Nobody puts a sticker on your windshield reminding you about it. And the consequences of ignoring it do not show up right away. Every Jeep Wrangler and Gladiator has gear oil sitting in both the front and rear differentials, and every Grand Cherokee, Cherokee, and Compass with all-wheel or four-wheel drive has differential housings that need the same attention. That fluid lubricates all the gears and bearings inside the axle housing. On a Wrangler, the Dana 30 front differential holds about 1 quart of 80 W90 gear oil, and the Dana 44 rear typically holds around 2 quarts, or 75 W140 synthetic if you tow regularly in summer heat. Rubicon models with factory lockers need the Mopar limited slip friction modifier added, or the locker engages with a harsh chatter. Jeep recommends inspecting differential fluid every 40,000 miles and changing it at that interval if you do any off-roading or towing at all. Now here's what makes this serious. If your Jeep has been through any kind of water crossing, there's a real chance water pushed past the diff seals and contaminated the fluid. Contaminated differential fluid turns milky gray and stops lubricating entirely. Run it long enough in that condition, and you get gear whine, bearing failure, and eventually a differential that gives out completely. Differential replacement runs $500 to over $1,500, depending on the severity of the damage. The fluid change itself at a shop runs $80 to $200. Done yourself with the right gear oil and a fluid pump, you're looking at $30 to $50 in materials. There's no version of that comparison where skipping the service makes financial sense, and if you think that one is overlooked, wait until you see number 2. Number 2. Transfer case fluid. This is the maintenance item that Jeep owners skip most consistently, and it's also the most expensive one to get completely wrong. Your transfer case is what makes four-wheel drive functional. It splits power between the front and rear axles, manages the shift from 2H to 4H to 4 low, and handles every demanding moment when your Jeep is doing exactly what it was built for. The fluid inside it lubricates the gears, manages heat, and prevents premature wear on every internal component. Both the NV241 and NV242 transfer cases used in Wrangler and Gladiator models take exactly 2.1 quarts of Mopar ATF plus 4, which is the same fluid spec used in the automatic transmission and the power steering system. Doing this yourself at home means dropping the transfer case skid plate first by removing 4 18mm bolts and 2 13mm nuts, then cracking the fill plug loose before you drain the old fluid. That's a big one. If the fill plug seizes and you've already drained the case, you're now stuck waiting for a tow instead of finishing a DIY job. Jeep recommends changing transfer case fluid every 60,000 miles under normal conditions, but off-road use, towing, extreme temperatures, and short trip driving all push you into severe duty territory, where the interval shortens. Skip this service long enough and the transfer case starts grinding, switching drive modes becomes difficult, and the unit eventually wears out from the inside. Transfer case replacement runs $1,000 to $2,500 in parts and labor. Jeep dealerships have quoted $800 to over $1,400 just for the combined fluid service covering the front differential, rear differential, and transfer case together. Done at home with the right Mopar fluids, the total materials cost for all 3 services runs around $110. The knowledge gap between those 2 price points is the entire reason this video exists. But number 1 on this list is the one that does not just cost you money. It can cost you control of the vehicle entirely. Number 1. Suspension and steering inspection. This is the most overlooked maintenance task on any Jeep, and it is the most dangerous one to skip. Jeep recommends inspecting suspension and steering components at every 20,000 mile mark, but in practice, most owners never have this checked between oil change visits unless something starts making noise. The problem with that approach is that worn suspension components do not always announce themselves loudly before they fail. Your Wrangler, Grand Cherokee, Gladiator, or Compass puts constant stress on ball joints, tie rod ends, track bars, control arm bushings, and sway bar links through every pothole, trail obstacle, speed bump, and rough road surface it crosses. The JL Wrangler in particular has documented issues with premature ball joint wear, and Mopar has released multiple technical service bulletins addressing front-end components on these trucks. Track bar bushings on any Wrangler are notorious for early failure because they absorb constant flex load every time the suspension cycles. When those components wear down and nobody catches it early, the failure can be sudden. A ball joint that goes fully does not give you a warning. It gives you a loss of steering control at speed. Even well before catastrophic failure, worn suspension parts cause accelerated tire wear, poor handling, the dreaded death wobble that Wrangler owners know too well, an alignment that drifts faster than normal no matter how recently you had it set. A full suspension inspection at a shop takes under an hour and costs nothing if you add it to an existing service appointment. Replacing a ball joint runs $200 to $400 per side. Replacing a track bar or control arm on a Wrangler runs $150 to $500 per piece. The inspection that catches these problems before they get there costs essentially nothing, and yet it's the item that gets passed over every single time on every single Jeep, until the day it does not. One of those 10 is already costing you money right now. Fix it. Subscribe for more every week and tell me your mileage in the comments. That video on screen is the next one you should watch. It's already queued up for you. Go click it. I'll see you in the next one.